I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
It's only a kick, a jump, a block. It's only a serve. It's only a tackle, a run. It's only for the fans. After all, it's only pressure. You got this. Adidas.
This episode is brought to you by Hyperice, the leader in advanced warm-up and recovery technology. They have tons of innovative products, like Venom-heated wearables to help soothe sore back muscles, Normatec compression boots to speed up recovery and increase circulation, and Hypervolt massage guns to improve mobility. Loved by athletes like Naomi Osaka and Erling Haaland. Try them yourself. Get 10% off your order with the code MOVE at hyperice.com.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Pens Cast Mailbag. This is part 2 for this week. It is the late afternoon evening of March the 14th, just a few days before St. Patrick's Day here. And as always, it is myself and Snail here tonight. Garrett is MIA this evening. But Snail, how are you doing on this Thursday with the weekend right there?
Well, I got to work this weekend, but the vibes are high right now. I just listened to a Dan Kovacevic. Is it Kovacevic or Kovacier?
You were right the first time.
Dan Kovacevic YouTube last night, and I'm convinced that the Penguins can still make the playoffs. So delusion is at an all-time high. It's a beautiful sunny day. It's going to be 70 degrees in Seattle. Not a lot could rain on my parade right now unless the Penguins soil themselves versus the San Jose Sharks this evening. Or for those listening, this will be yesterday. So that's where I'm at, Robbie. How are things over in Pittsburgh?
It was a beautiful day in Pittsburgh today. It is starting to get a little overcast, and it's supposed to rain overnight. But for the most part, it was a beautifully unseasonably warm day here in Western PA. So
spring is in the air.
Spring was in the air today. It definitely felt like there should be some baseball going on. It kind of felt like a round 2 playoff type weather here in Western PA. But unfortunately, it looks like we're going to get some cold settling back in next week. Nothing brutal, but got a little spoiled these last 2 days.
I hear you. We're in the same boat. Well, I guess we got Mailbag Part 2 here, and let's get into some questions. I think there was a note saying that these aren't all the questions. Some of the questions from Sunday's Mailbag will be included on next week's. So for those that maybe don't hear their question asked, do not worry, they are coming. So let's start things off with a question from Tony Gale going over to Robbie here. And it's a food question. We love these here at the Skating Penguin Network. Tony Gale says he's heading back to the States in the summer. He's going down to Florida. He's a big fan of barbecue. And does he have, Robbie, do you have any recommendations for him for a chain or maybe an independent restaurant that serves up that fire barbecue down in the wild state of Florida?
Yeah, Florida in the summer, pack your bathing suit and some sunscreen, Tony, because it's going to be hot down there. As for recommendation, for Florida, I cannot say that I do. And I say this as a big barbecue fan, love the barbecue. I've been to a place in Texas called Terry Black's. I do not know how far. I do know they have a couple locations. I just don't know if they go that over to the state of Florida. But in the South, unless you are just at a place where I try to stay away from chain places, or at least like multi-state chains. You can have some chains in the same state. Get some local chains, or like you said, a good independent place. If there's people lined out the door, it's good food. Is what I found. So look for a popular location, not necessarily on a main street, but maybe on a street less traveled wherever you're going in Florida, and enjoy some good barbecue, because I'm with you there, Tony. I would definitely be with you getting some barbecue down in the South. Question number 2. This one's going over. This is Brian here asking for Snail. If you had asked me what the best gummy bears were, I'd say Haribo, but without hesitation. But I'm starting to think Albanese are the best.
So I've never had Albanese gummies before.
I don't know if I have either. I've had Haribo.
Oh, Haribo, dude, those are phenomenal. Have you ever had the Coca-Cola bottles? The Haribo Coca-Cola bottles?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent treat. Yeah. Those are. But back to gummy bears. There's a company called, I think, Black Forest that makes decent gummy bears as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a Northwest thing, maybe.
That I'm not sure.
As a vegan, though, maybe to some of your surprise, gummy bears typically contain gelatin, which is derived from animal bones. So there's a company that I love, and it's not even just because they're vegan. They're delicious because there's an attention to detail with these gummy bears. And I think even if you don't care what you're eating, or if you have no moral qualms with the way that your food's made, I would highly recommend this company, because they are truly a quality gummy bear. And whenever I see these in a store, I have to get a bag, because they are just that good. They have flavors that are, I'm not going to say they're like strange or weird, but they are maybe a little bit unique compared to the the plethora of flavors that you'd find in a normal bag gummy bear. They're called Vigo bears, or I think it'd be called Vigo bears. They have a few flavors here. Let me read off a couple for you. One of them is called foamy gummy bears, and they taste like maybe like a strawberry milkshake. And they have kind of this odd, like, they're kind of a cloudy color inside of them, as opposed to just the kind of slightly transparent. They have those. They have like their fruity blend, which is just like really strong, potent flavors: watermelon, raspberry, lemon. Really good themselves. And then they have a sour brand, and I love sour. Robbie, do you like sour treats?
Yeah,
love sour treats. So they have you can get their bag that's sour is, of course, like lemon and lime looking. It's yellow and green. Phenomenal as well. Not like were they called sour heads?
Warheads,
not warheads, where they're going to give you canker sores or erode the enamel after 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But like the perfect punch of sourness, but it's also enjoyable, and you don't pay for it after. So I would highly suggest those. But Brian, I think we can all agree that Haribo, Robbie and I haven't tried these Albanese. Haribo's gotta, they're going to remain the staple. And I would put up there, just for conversation's sake, Black Forest gummy bears are decent as well. Robbie, you got any takes on gummy bears?
Haribo obviously is at least from my experience, the pinnacle of gummy bears. But I'm always down to try different things, especially like some of those regional brands. You never know; they can be hard to come by if you don't live in that area. But Haribo are obviously great. I did hear someone say stay away from the sugar-free Haribo. It will give you the runs.
It's that fake sweetener they probably use.
Yeah, it's something like that. I saw that. I think you could get them on Amazon, and all the reviews were flooded with like, these made me crap myself for like 24 hours.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so don't buy the sugar-free.
Some people, sugar-free is kind of in right now. A lot of people are trying to cut down on their refined sugar. I certainly am not, but beware. I'd rather eat the sugar and add that, spike my blood sugar than soil myself in a car ride. All right, we'll move on from the gummy talk. This question is coming from Brian as well, and it would be going over to Garrett. I'll take this one, and then Robbie and I will rotate reading Garrett's answers that he so kindly wrote in for us. Brian asks Garrett, has Sully lost the room, or has just the failures of the season broken this team? And Garrett's thoughts on this are, I think it's a combination of both. When you're in the doldrums and not living up to expectations, it can be hard to give 110% every night, knowing your fate is essentially sealed. Sullivan is a good coach with a bad old team. That said, I would not be surprised if there was a mutual parting of ways at the end of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment. I think it's definitely a combination of both. It just frustration all around, and sometimes it just the expiration date hits, and that's what it is.
Yeah, Robbie, in hockey, it's like it's typically around 3 years. I feel like a coach is really their most potent with the team. Sullivan's at year 9, 8.
He got hired in December of 15, so he would be
15. He's
been there about 8.5 years. So like he is well over the average for an NHL coach. So.
And Sullivan does frustrate me at times. I think I share similar sentiments with a lot of the fan base, but I do know that he is a great coach. And if Sullivan parted ways, or if he was fired, dude, there's no chance there would be ill will towards him. He did so much for this team. The back-to-back cup years. I mean, come on. He came in and helped save that season, and he brought up all those all the boys from the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. I mean, it would be a hat tip and good luck in future endeavors, and you'd mean that.
Absolutely.
All right, Robbie, here's a question coming at you from Brian, question number 4 here, and he says, I'm going to leave my response to the prospects we got in return for Jake neutral until I see Jesse Marshall's and or Josh Yohe's analysis. I really appreciate and respect their work.
Yeah, especially Jesse on that. They both write for The Athletic. If you don't know who either of those guys are, but if you've been around Penguins hockey long enough, you probably do. Absolutely, especially, like I said, Jesse, he does a lot of draft analysis. He knows a lot of these prospects. So I'm interesting to see what his full take on this is with video breakdown and stuff like that. I know a lot of people were focused on maybe the top tier of the Carolina prospect pool, but unfortunately, prices weren't quite that high. So it is what it is. I'm interested. I'm glad these guys are here now, and hopefully they can be part of a good future of Penguins hockey is really my entire take on that. No point in being frustrated until we see what these guys are.
Do you think the reason that they didn't part with one of their top prospects was because Jake wasn't willing to sign an extension, or Dubas didn't allow Carolina to talk to Jake about an extension?
I mean, that could be a part of it. It's also the risk of giving that up for a guy that might only be there for 3 months. I mean, that's completely, again, everything's a gamble when it comes to this kind of stuff. And he may not be there next year. He could be back in Pittsburgh. He could be out west. He could be anywhere. But yeah, and again, it's a rental. You're basically, the price is always going to be a little lower. If Jake would have a year left on his contract, completely different story. And if they would have had a sign and trade type deal, then I think it's an absolutely completely different story. If he's going there with a deal in place, I'm not trading him unless I absolutely know I'm getting the top of your prospect pool. Question number 5 for Snail here. Do we still see a general manager named this upcoming offseason and Dubas just being the president of hockey ops, or do you think he'll still handle both duties?
This is tough because with what I know about Dubas prior to him coming over to Pittsburgh, he very much wanted to be the guy in charge of decisions regarding rosters and all of that when he was in Toronto. And Shanny constantly was putting up the stop sign for him. And I think that's ultimately what led to, not ultimately, that is part of the picture of why he ended up leaving and they parted ways. With that said, I think when Dubas named himself as kind of the general manager and the president, I think that's kind of the way he wants it right now. And I think with this, the way that the season went and where the Penguins are at, I don't see him being in any rush to get someone else in there. I think what he would, and this is just me, this is my own, what I've created in my head. And Robbie, I'd invite you to chime in at any point here, but I feel like Dubas wants to right the ship and get on whatever path it is that the organization and Dubas sees fit. And then after kind of that sort of uncomfortable heavy lifting is done and they're kind of pointed in a direction, maybe then talks will come up of a GM. We know Spezza's up there with him. Every time they show Dubas, I see Spezza right next to him. You got to wonder if Spezza is gonna maybe eventually take over the actual GM position, as Dubas has been sort of grooming him, I guess you could say, to be teaching him the ropes in the way Dubas sees. But just for conversation's sake, there's a couple guys that I wouldn't mind taking over a GM position under Dubas as the president of hockey ops in Pittsburgh. And one of them is the name that we heard a little bit before Dubas was hired, and he has quite a bit of familiarity with the Penguins, and that's Jason Botterill. He's actually the assistant over in Seattle right now. He's tied to the Penguins' success to a certain extent in the past. Familiarity with Sid. I wouldn't mind him stepping in as the general manager. There was Spencer Carberry. I don't know if you, Rob, are you familiar with Spencer Carberry?
I can't say I am.
Okay, so he's I think the assistant GM right now, unless something slipped this is bad, but a bad bit of info. But I think he's the assistant GM in Toronto, or one of them. I heard a lot of his name out a lot this last summer. Also, Jamie Langenberner, who's the assistant GM in Boston right now, and we know that the Penguins being owned by Fenway Sports, maybe they look at what Boston has been doing over there for a while, and with the way Boston's been in their long history of success and not having to ever break it down and rebuild, maybe he's somebody that would get a little bit of consideration or interest from Dubas and company as a potential general manager. Robbie, you got anybody on the top of your head there you're thinking of that maybe you'd like to see as a GM in Pittsburgh? Are you happy with Dubas in the role that he's in?
It'll be interesting to see what he does, how he feels, but I think he wants as much control as possible, so I don't see him doing anything this summer. All right, question number 6. This one would go to Garrett. I'll take this one. And Brian asked, how was the post-tattoo itch for Garrett? Garrett says, the itching period lasted about a week for me, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. There were times when it flared up more often than others, but I kept slapping it and reapplying moisturizer. Everything is Gucci now, and Garrett should not be using that kind of language.
Yeah. Slapping it and applying moisturizer.
Yeah, and calling anything Gucci.
Robbie, do you have any tattoos?
I do not.
You ever gonna get one?
Probably not, but never say never.
I hear you. All right. Question number 7. Brian asks, has there ever been a player scarier than when Gino turns into the Russian bear?
I mean, scary as in could lose his mind and do something completely stupid. Maybe. Gino, obviously, when he gets in that mood, he just goes full Hulkamania or Malkamania, and especially in his prime, would just become an unstoppable force. So, yeah. I mean, it was always great. Hopefully he can channel some of that energy when still needed. But for an opposing team, when he got into that mode, it was not someone that you wanted to face.
No, you'd hear teams like, let him sleep. Like, don't poke the bear.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Ginla. You know, teams would be like, don't get him riled up, because if you piss him off or you take a dumb penalty or something, or if he takes a dumb penalty and you instigate with him, he turns into, a Russian bear, and he can become quite unstoppable.
All right, question number 8 from we're switching over to Tony Gale here for Snail. Amongst the fog, Magnus Hellberg got traded out, which seems to have gone a little under the radar. Will that come to bite the Penguins if they lose Nedeljkovic in the offseason?
No, simply no.
Yeah. No.
Best of luck to Hellberg. He's going to a team that is poised to make another deep run. So, I wish him nothing but success. As I've called him, welcome to Hellberg, population Magnus, because he was actually he was pretty good in his starts with the Penguins when they needed him.
Mm-hmm.
But you have Jari signed to a long contract, and then you have who's the fellow down there in the AHL?
Joel Blomqvist.
Joel Blomqvist. He's having a great year. He's an all-star in the AHL. Maybe it's time that he starts to wear the ball cap and back up and learn the ways of the NHL next year. You never know. So you got a couple goalies in the pipeline, maybe not NHL ready goalies or goalies with any sort of aspirations of being a starter in the NHL. But if they don't re-sign Ned, which I doubt they're going to want to pay Ned next year, losing Hellberg is not really going to be the biggest issue that the Penguins have. All right, question 9. It's from our pal Edward Beckham, and he's asking Garrett here. April 10th, I'm going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. That evening, do I go to A, Guardians versus Chicago White Sox, or B, the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Memphis Grizzlies? Let's see. Garrett's response for this question is, for context, I'm seeing Pirates at PNC the day before, and I've never been to an NBA game. I too, oh wait, no, sorry. That was, I think I got that mixed up. That last thing was actually from Edward. For context, I'm seeing, am I getting this right, Robbie? Am I butchering
If it's in
this?
red. Okay. So that's, the for context is Edward. The red is Garrett.
Okay, so I copy and pasted from email, so it's
on
black right now. Yeah. So Edward says, for context, I'm seeing Pirates at PNC the day before, and he's never been to an NBA game. Garrett then says here that he has also never been to an NBA game. If you want the quintessential American sports experience, I say go to the NBA game, since you already have baseball checked off the list. Robbie, have you been to an NBA game before?
A long time ago, I was in an NBA game in New York City.
Really?
So, yeah. The only time I've ever been to one. I'd like to go to another one. But, I mean, if you want the quintessential American experience, you probably go to a baseball game. But if you're going to one the day before and want to switch it up, then I'd say, I'd maybe try to get tickets to the NBA game.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Sounds good. All right, let's move on here to question 10, going back to Robbie from our pal Tony Gale. Is the playoff dream really over? ESPN last night had the Penguins' chances down to 3%. That seems a little harsh to me, and I still cling on to the smallest chances a miracle will happen.
So the best I've seen for the Penguins' playoff chances is about 8%. So not great. Not great at all. I think with the selling, it was pretty much written in stone where they see things going. It would be very much the way the season has gone if the Penguins just for some reason decide to go on a tear and keep themselves in the conversation. I don't see them making the playoffs at this point, but I guess you never say never until that playoff chance is 0%. So, but I'm not optimistic anymore. For Snail from Brian here on question 11, since Jake is now gone, it's unfortunate Jake shakes go with him. I'm sure Snail was looking forward to trying one.
I'm sure that what's the outfit that does the Jake shakes?
Milkshake Factory.
I'm sure he scored a lot of goals. I'm sure they're kind of like, finally we can stop giving these things away and losing a profit every time this guy scores. I don't consume dairy. Even before I went vegan, I was pretty lactose intolerant. I would have I'd get diarrhea pretty frequently from milkshakes and pizzas and such. So I probably wouldn't have ever tried one, but I when I saw Jake get traded, I did see a lot of chatter on Twitter about the Jake Shakes leaving with him. And you got to wonder how that's going to affect the local economy. Have you ever had a Jake Shake, Robbie? Have you benefited?
I have not.
No?
I have not, no.
Wow. Have you ever been close? Have you ever thought about it? Like, have you been in the vicinity of one and been like, Jake got on the board tonight. I might have myself one.
I don't think so.
That's shocking to me because I feel like he just scored so often, and you hear the Jake Shakes, the commercials would be on, and you didn't have one. Do you think Garrett's had one? I know. I think Garrett said he never did either.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but if I do recall correctly, he said he did not.
Well, there you have it. Jake Shakes are gone.
Yep. Okay. Question number 12. This one is for Garrett, so I'll take it here real quick. It's from Brian. Dan Kingerski tweeted that Sid is not leaving, but is invested in turning this the team around. So all this clickbait and Sid deserves his Ray Bork moment need to shut the hell up. We won 3 in Pittsburgh. It's not the same. Garrett says Sidney Crosby is 900.9999% likely to stay in Pittsburgh. I hate these quote-unquote Sid to Colorado rumors of playing with his friend from his hometown. Do you know where else he has friends from? 2 of them in Pittsburgh. I know some of these reporters and writers are clickbait machines, but this is so dumb. Crosby is not going anywhere. And again, something else I'd agree with as well. The Ray Bork moment is non-comparable, like Garrett mentions, or Brian mentions. If he had no cups, it's a different story. He has 3 of them in Pittsburgh. That's where his legacy is. I don't see him going anywhere, but I guess we'll see for sure.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere. All right, here, Robbie, question coming at you from Ed Beckham, and he asks, if you played for the Penguins, what number would you wear, and why is it 66? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So I grew up playing baseball, and in high school, my baseball number was 14. So I would wear 14 if I played for the Penguins. I think somebody asked this question a long, long time ago. It may have been still when we were even affiliated with Pennsburg. I think they asked this question or something similar to it. And I always said 14 because that was my baseball number in high school. If not that, I grew up a massive Roberto Clemente fan. I'd wear 21, but 21 is retired with the Penguins, so I couldn't wear that, so I'd have to go with 14. Question number 14, coincidentally enough, from Kim Larson. Kim says, I would start a total rebuild, and I would only make Sid, Letang, and maybe also Pettersson safe. I'd be willing to listen to offers on all the other players, including Malkin and Carlson.
Quite an interesting proposition you have there, Kim. I've also pondered the idea of if I was sitting in Dubas's chair, like I often do, with the controller to GM mode, I would probably not consider a total rebuild. And again, let's be honest here, Kim. Robbie, I want to know what you think too. From my understanding, a rebuild is where you get rid of everyone, scorched earth, and the rebuild isn't done until you've traded. Not done. The rebuild hasn't started until you've traded your last good player.
Basically, yeah. A total rebuild is stripping it down to the studs, and then maybe even blowing the studs out.
And then blowing the studs out, exactly.
Yeah. You're basically left with a foundation.
If you're keeping Sid, that's not a rebuild. If you're keeping Sid, and as you've listed here, Letang and Pettersson, not a rebuild. That's a retooling. That's a LA Kings. That's what the Kings did.
Yep.
I'm more in favor of, because I don't think Sid, even if you really, I mean, I'm sure that I don't think Sid's the type of guy that would be, traded kicking and screaming. I'm sure that if there was an interest in tearing it down to the studs and then absolutely obliterating the studs themselves, I think Sid would seriously consider going elsewhere to look where he could win. And then we're talking about maybe those rumors you hear about Colorado with there's 31 other teams that would take Sid and move heaven and earth to get a guy like Sid on their team. So I don't think a rebuild is in the picture here. I think a retooling is the most feasible thing. And this is just me. I mean, you mentioned here the guys you think that you would keep. I think that I would take a little bit of a different approach. I think that if you want to get younger and looking at what teams need, I'm sorry, but moving Malkin, you might have to pay to get rid of him. I don't know if another team, I know he has a pedigree. I know that he can be dominant at times, but from what we've seen this season, he came out of the gates hot and he looks 37 now. He's a 37-year-old with a lot of miles. He has a reconstructed knee or whatever. It's not, teams aren't going to be looking, especially contenders, to bring in him with his cap hit, with his age. You might be looking at a bottom feeder team that might take him on if you pay a little bit to sell some jerseys and put some bums in seats. Mm-hmm. That's no disrespect to Malkin either. That's just, I feel like, a realistic way of looking. I think, Robbie, you agree. I saw you nodding your head. That's kind of where it'd be at with Malkin. I don't know if you're even getting rid of Malkin. So Letang and Carlson. Letang's the older of the two defensemen. They both play a similar game. I know that a lot of people are like, well, Letang's been better defensively. Carlson's been better defensively too, considering his last few seasons. We know he won the Norris last year. He's actually got better defensive metrics this season. He's Sullivan in whatever, this system that Sully preaches and this coaching staff have a lot of warts on them, but they've somehow been able to convince Carlson to be a little bit better defensively. So I'd move on from Letang. I think there's a couple of teams looking for some pros, some veterans. A right shot D-man is always going to be a hot commodity in the NHL. And I just think that there's probably a team like a Buffalo who has a plethora of young left-handed defensemen. You have a team like Ottawa who's got a lot of young players and prospects that aren't able to get it done. They need a good pro in there. Giroux is not... Giroux can't do it alone. maybe his hometown in Montreal, you'd wonder if maybe they'd take a stud right shot D veteran. I'm looking at situations more like that for a Letang I'd be keeping Carlson. Carlson is a unicorn. He is one of the best offensive defensemen of our generation. He is 33. Next year he'll be turning 34. He's not a spring chicken. He has his injuries as well. All the veterans on the Penguins have had their fair share of injuries. They have a lot of miles on them. But if you're looking to retool, I'd keep the Swedish defensive pair. I'd keep Pettersson and I'd keep Carlson. I think they're a good first pair defense. They're a good first pairing defense pair there, and I'd keep Sid. And then everyone else, I'd be seeing what the market is in the offseason. And I'll take a step back here. And Robbie, you want to add on to any of this and Kim's thoughts of a rebuild?
Yeah, I mean, a rebuild, obviously that term can be used rather loosely, but again, they're not in a position to just start dumping players. Again, if Malkin on a rental, sure, you could easily pull that off with no problem, but with that contract, and again, remember, these guys have the no trade clauses. If they don't want to go anywhere, they don't have to go anywhere. They don't owe the Penguins anything. It doesn't have to be one of those, well, think about the future of the team. That's not how it works with these guys. It shouldn't work with these guys. They're legends of the game. If they want to finish out their careers in Pittsburgh, they finish their careers in Pittsburgh. What you get for them will not be what jumpstarts a rebuild in any significant way. What jumpstarts a rebuild in any specific way, or any significant way, is whatever top 10 pick they get this year. Luck out, get Mike Sullivan. That's fantastic. If not, there is enough talent in this top 10 that you can get a beginnings of a foundation for a rebuild. What you get for these guys is not going to do it. Yeah, you can take this one.
We're on 15 here.
Yeah, this is Garrett's last one. Yep.
Last question for this week's mailbag, coming from Andreas Castle. Andreas and I were actually having some good conversation on Twitter about some metal bands. So, anyways, Andreas here he says here, in Germany, we have a problem that there is violence towards referees in low-level soccer leagues. Sorry. Does this happen in low-level hockey leagues over here? And Garrett says, I've read stories of parents verbally assaulting referees during kids' games, and I think that's equally stupid and a bad look from those parents. Listen here, Karen and Kyle, your kid is very likely not special. Your kid is very likely not special enough to play pro sports. Please leave the underpaid volunteer referee alone and quit hedging your bets on the very unlikely success of your child making it to the big time. Robbie, have you ever seen refs be abused at lower level, maybe even Little League games?
There's a crisis of youth officiating in the United States, mostly because parents have just gotten completely out of control. So there's definitely a crisis with that. And the difference between like soccer and hockey is, at least in hockey, there is a physical barrier that is hard to climb over. There are some barriers in soccer, but for the most part, at the best, especially in low-level leagues, it's maybe a chain link fence. Here, wherever rink you're playing at has glass, and it's not easy to just climb over glass, and the doors are pretty much off limits for the most part. So it's definitely, I'm sure if there was easier access to a shipping or a onto the ice, you would see more of it. But just from a verbal abuse standpoint, it is really, really bad in the United States that way, which has taken its toll on officiating in the United States. And it's unfortunate because guess what? Your kid's probably not going pro. So just let them out there and have fun.
Agreed. I would say to Andreas Castle's question here, I would say that the probability of violence towards a referee in any of the sports would probably be the most likely in low-level hockey leagues. You get beer league games, which I would consider a lower league. You mix in a little bit of alcohol with some people that maybe are trying to relive their college years or their pro dreams that they never achieved. You might see a little bit of violence there. I'm not in favor for that at all. You got to respect the referees. But yeah, I would say that there's probably the most likely would be in lower level hockey leagues, especially here in the U.S. And I think that does it for this week's mailbag.
Yep, that does.
Again, if you didn't hear your question asked this week, we had a pretty large mailbag, so that will be tacked on to next week's mailbag. Keep an eye out for Twitter. Turn your notifications on for when Garrett drops the bat signal, the mailbag for next week. We got a game tonight, San Jose versus the Pittsburgh Penguins in Pittsburgh. And then we got a double header coming up this weekend, Saturday, Sunday. Robbie, who are they playing this weekend? I think it's two formidable foes.
Rangers and Red Wings.
Formidable foes indeed.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got, Rob. Anything more you want to add on before we get out of here?
No, I got nothing. Stick with us, I guess. Is about all I got. I mean, we are getting toward the end of the season. Maybe have a recap tonight. Again, if the Penguins don't score, I am boycotting the recap. This weekend, with it back-to-back, we'll figure out what we're going to do with that. But other than that, yeah, that's all I got.
That's all I got. Let's hope the Penguins score tonight. # keep Robbie engaged.
Yes, absolutely.
So that'll do it for Robbie Noggle. I am Snail, and this has been another episode of the Skating Penguin Network Mailbag. We will talk to you all again very soon.